It's the worst of the CBC for January 10th, 2020, the show where I watch the CBC so you don't have to. And this is a public service announcement show where I'm basically informing you that, listen, if you've been watching regularly, if you've been a fan of the page before, if you've been following me, you're probably not going to disagree with me when I say, hey, CBC is state propaganda. And it's propaganda and it's left-wing propaganda. We all know this, and I've been going through and dissecting this. Here is Red Alert. Not only is the CBC state propaganda, it's been infiltrated. The CBC is now, or the state has been infiltrated to a level where the CBC is now also quasi-Iranian state propaganda. And here's how I'm going to make this case. So, yesterday I said that I got a call in the morning from an Iranian activist, and they were telling me that, hey, what the regime is going to try and do, and through its lobbying groups, primarily the ICC, they're going to try and use this tragedy as a method to reopen the embassy, right? Stephen Harper shut down the embassy. Trudeau wanted to reopen it, and then they killed some Canadians to try and make it happen. Trudeau, gave in, but then the Conservatives shut it down. So what I reported yesterday is, oh my God, I started to see them lay down the propaganda framework for needing consular services for the victims and all these services. Today, they went full out and started to make the case. They brought on an expert, who was Colin Robertson, a former diplomat, and they brought him on to actually make the case for about 5 to 7 minutes on why we need to reopen the embassy right now, even making the absurd claim that the Americans would be happy if we reopen the embassy. In his case, it was essentially, we need diplomatic relations here to get better answers, blah, blah, blah. Now, there's two things here. One, to get better answers from the Islamic Republic is silly because they have to be giving us the truth. There has to be a method of trust, right? So right now, the Islamic Republic is even denying the plane was shot down, right? They're denying it. They're saying it's American propaganda, right? They've already bulldozed the crash site, covered up all the evidence. So, what do we want? Do we really want access to a crime scene that's been bleached and scrubbed, right? Do we want access to the Islamic Republic so they can lie to us more effectively? And good on the CBC, but then bad on the CBC for actually showing the footage of the plane getting hit by a missile and explaining that, yes, it was hit by a missile and everyone believes it. Now, they didn't actually say yes. They're like, oh, it's still speculation. And they tried to blame Pompeo for making it up in some way. But then they showed the footage of it happening. So it was a huge cognitive dissonance here, right? They didn't point that out. Number two, and more importantly with the embassy, is these things work both ways. There is a reason why we closed down the Islamic Republic's embassy in Canada, because the Islamic Republic's embassy in Canada was being used as a front to infiltrate our country. You see this in Majid Jawhari and others. Trust me, there are others other than Majid Jawhari. But there are organizations that lobby on behalf of the regime. They have tons of money. In America, it's mostly NIAC. That's their primary one. In Canada, it's the ICC, Iranian Canadian Congress. Right? And what will happen if they get an embassy, right, then they can bring Islamic Republic people, they can set up shop in Canada. Yes, we can set up shop in Iran and have better relations with Iran, but they can have easier access into Canadian society. And the reason why we shut them down is because, as you saw when I posted the picture, Iran has terror cells globally. And yes, in Canada, 6 months ago, there was a man arrested at Pearson Airport doing surveillance for Hezbollah. It's an Iranian proxy. That's a terrorist group. Right? So reestablishing the embassy gives Iran a stronger foothold in Canada, makes it easier for them to send money to cells, makes it easier for them for infiltrator politics, makes it easier for them to support the regime lobbyists here. That's why we closed it, because there was evidence that there was significant infiltration and funding of extremist groups coming from Iran's embassy. To reopen it under diplomatic relations is silly. It is, they're giving you basically 15% of the argument. They spent 7 minutes, brought an expert, and he gave 15% of the argument, and I've just given you the other 85%. So this is important to bring up because I think I've made the case, because I said, watch out yesterday. They're laying the groundwork for this propaganda to be said to make the case for reopen the embassy. And then the next day they literally bring on people and focus on reopening the embassy and don't list one of the potential dangers or one of the reasons why it was actually shut down. They just say all the positives, and they even make the absurd claim that the Americans want us to have an embassy. Well, they don't. So you're on notice that the CBC is propaganda, and now it's now pro-Iranian propaganda sometimes. I don't know if this is how much of that is like it's been infiltrated by Iran, which I think there's significant evidence of attempts to at least do so, and how much of it is just Trump derangement syndrome and the residuals of it being sort of a left-wing bubble. I think it's a combination of the two, because you see this in American media too, basically parroting Iranian state propaganda, which is fundamentally insane. So the biggest omissions are, there's two major claims people are making, like why would Iran knock down a plane with its own people? Well, the thing you're admitting is the CBC did not cover the fact that 2 weeks ago, thousands of Iranians were killed on the streets. A large number were taken prisoner and have not been seen again. Thousands taken prisoner and thousands injured. So Iran just got finished 2 weeks ago slaughtering thousands of its citizens and imprisoning others, made it illegal to mourn them. So yes, they're pretty fond of killing their own citizens. They've done it before. They're going to do it again. And the other thing, the other propaganda point that they're just not debating is, was Qasem Soleimani was he planning a threat? Was he an imminent threat to America? Was he a threat to America? Was he planning a threat in America? There was currently an attack on the American embassy. The American embassy was under attack at the point where they took out Soleimani. And the flags being flown at that attack, there were Iranian flags, there were Hezbollah flags, all the flags being flown at that embassy when attacking. Look at the picture I posted, and this is going around the internet, of a IRGC commander behind all the flags of the terrorist groups they support. They had that press conference. You see those flags there, you see them in the embassy attack. So yes, the embassy was currently under attack. So that's another horrible omission. So watch out. So I've talked about Majid Johari, Liberal MP in Richmond Hill. There are others. When the time is right, I'll put out information on them. But just know, sort of layman's, if you see Majid Johari, Iranian infiltrator, and the number one regime lobby in Canada, the number one not Iranian people, but Islamic Republic regime, pro-Ayatollah, death to America, death to Israel's people, ICC, Iranian Canadian Congress, watch out for them. So on the Rosemary Barden scale, we have another 10 out of 10, 10 Ayatollahs, 10 Rosemary Bardens wearing a hijabs out of 10 because, oh God, is she ugly. All right, see you tomorrow.